Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be doing a 12-team PPR mock draft from the 10th overall spot on Yahoo Fantasy. Inside of today's video, I'm going to be going in depth in my thought process as I make all of my picks from the 10th overall spot, and I'm also going to be talking about my thoughts of the draft as a whole, the other picks that are going on around me. But before we get on into this mock draft, I would like to ask if you guys are new to the YouTube channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, to please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. Not only is it free, me and the guys at the Awesemo Fantasy Football YouTube channel put out content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 Fantasy Football Championship. I would also appreciate if you hit that like button down below to help boost this video up the algorithm so that more beautiful people like yourself can see today's video. I'd also like to ask that if you guys have never seen me before, you don't follow me on Twitter, so please follow me on Twitter at NotoriousFNTSY, at NotoriousFNTSY. I tweet every single day about football related things, so if you guys want to see that, make sure that you check it out. So we are sitting at the number 10 overall spot in this draft, and if I'm being honest with you, that is one of my favorite spots to be drafting in a 10 or in a 12-team league, I should say. In a 12-team league, as I feel as though being on that turn is very, very important. I kind of hate sitting in the middle, if I'm being honest with you, because I feel like the whole time I really have no control of the draft. So I like picking at 9, 10, 11, or 12 in a 12-team league. Let me know down below in the comment section where your guys' favorite spot to draft from is in 2021 inside of the first round. So let's get on into it. The draft begins with Christian McCaffrey, followed by Dalvin Cook. Very typical 1-2 punch off the rip of the draft. Typically, you're going to be seeing Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook be the number 1 and number 2 overall pick in a majority of leagues. Christian McCaffrey is basically always the number 1 overall pick at number 2. Sometimes you see someone other than Dalvin Cook go there, but we see Cook in this draft, followed by Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara. Very, very normal start to things. I personally like Alvin Kamara more than Derrick Henry in a PPR format, as I feel as though Alvin Kamara could really get 1,000 receiving yards, get a crazy amount of receptions, whereas Derrick Henry is definitely limited in his receiving game, as he barely gets any targets, and when he does, he drops them because the guy has stone hands. So to me, I do like Derrick Henry. I think he's a very safe running back, but the upside of Alvin Kamara, in my opinion, is much higher than with Derrick Henry. After that, we see Ezekiel Elliott. Personally, I would have drafted Aaron Jones ahead of Ezekiel Elliott, but if I'm being honest with you, it's kind of a coin flip. We can easily see Ezekiel Elliott finish as a top 5 running back in 2021. He didn't have the hottest year last year, but that is because of the injury to Dak Prescott. When Dak was healthy, Ezekiel Elliott was looking pretty solid, so I am not surprised that people are drafting Ezekiel Elliott inside the top 5. After Zeke comes 9-inch Nicholas Chubb, Saquon Barkley, Aaron Jones, and Travis Kelce. Only one non-running back off the board so far through the first 9 picks of the draft. So we're up here at the 10 overall spot looking at the board. Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris. With what we see right here, I'm going to go ahead and lean wide receiver and go with wide receiver of the Green Bay Packers, Devontae Adams. While I'm normally someone who likes to go running back very heavily early on in the draft, with all of the running backs that already came off the board, I felt as though the value was not really there, so I'd like to go ahead and attack the wide receiver position. To me, Devontae Adams is the clear wide receiver number 1 in fantasy football for 2021, but you can definitely make the argument for Stephon Diggs or for Tyreek Hill. I'm pretty much fine drafting any of those guys as the number 1 overall guy, but with Aaron Rodgers back at the helm for the Green Bay Packers, I think Devontae Adams is a very safe bet for a first-round pick. After with Adams came Tyreek Hill and Stephon Diggs. Now, normally in the first round, you're typically going to see 2 to 4 non-running backs go inside of the first round. This time we see 4 non-running backs. The reason why people hammer in on running backs early on in these drafts is because the success rate at the running back position in the first and second round is 75%, but after that, it takes a dip off in the third and fourth round to 60%. So drafting a running back in the first 2 rounds is one of the least risky things you can do. The wide receiver hit rate also 75%. So the odds that a Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs ends up busting is relatively low. After that, we see Justin Jefferson followed by Jonathan Taylor. So we're back up on the board here with our pick, and we are probably going to be going running back here with Austin Eckler, running back of the LA Chargers. I've noticed if I'm around this 9, 10, 11, or 12 range that I've been able to acquire this type of a stack in a lot of drafts where I go maybe wide receiver inside of the first round, but then in the second round, I am very comfortable with the running back still available. Austin Eckler is one of those running backs that I have been targeting very heavily inside of my drafts and looking to pinpoint him to get him onto my roster, because I believe with Justin Herbert being so good, with Keenan Allen being so good, with this offense looking like it is going to be scoring tons of points, with Austin Eckler being such a good pass-catching running back, that he really has the potential to finish as a top 5 guy in the PPR format. Now, that is a distinction that is very important to be making. The difference between Austin Eckler in PPR, half PPR, in standard. In PPR, we're getting that full point per reception. Austin Eckler really does and should be in the talk of being a potential top 5 running back in fantasy football. In half PPR, maybe you want to peel back a little. In standard, you definitely want to peel back a lot on that statement, because so much of his points come from the receiving game. But I do like Austin Eckler a lot in PPR, which is what we are drafting for today. After Austin Eckler, we see Najee Harris, DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Brown, and DK Metcalf. Pretty crazy to see Justin Jefferson come off the board as the number 4 overall wide receiver. Do I think that he is top 5 potential? 100%, but I do think it is a little bit of a reach. We still have not seen Calvin Ridley come off the board. In my opinion, Calvin Ridley is the 4th best wide receiver for fantasy football this season. It just appears that with how shit tier this defense is in Atlanta, that they're going to have to be throwing the ball so often in these games, especially later on in the game, that a guy like Calvin Ridley is just going to be able to suck in these targets and get a whole lot of points based upon the volume coming his way. With Julio Jones gone as well, the ceiling is very, very high for Calvin Ridley this season. After Eckler, we see Najee Harris, DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, and Calvin Ridley. Ridley coming off the board as the wide receiver 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 off of the board. That is not very normal, but again, I do understand why something like this could happen. DK Metcalf, that dude looks like he was crafted in a fucking lab. He is so chiseled. People want to be drafting that kind of a guy because of how much of a freak athlete he is. So I get it. You draft him, AJ Brown ahead of him, DeAndre Hopkins. It is entirely possible that this happens, but not a very likely scenario. But with all these wide receivers coming off the board inside the second round, Antonio Gibson falling to the back half of the second round, as is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Joe Mixon, and Josh Allen, first quarterback off the board. That is very abnormal. Is that impossible? No, but a majority of the time you are going to be seeing Patrick Mahomes as the first quarterback off of the board. I think Patrick Mahomes is probably the safest bet to be the number 1 overall quarterback, but I'm still personally not someone who likes to draft a quarterback early. But what I understand with why people want to draft quarterbacks early is because they are trying to be safe. The odds of you drafting a Josh Allen, a Patrick Mahomes, like the 3rd or 4th round, I guess the 2nd round in this case, and that they end up being completely dick for your team and they end up screwing you over is very low. Very low. The odds are very much in your favor that you ended up drafting a pick that doesn't bust. But then you're looking in the 4th, 5th, 6th round now to draft your running backs or wide receivers, especially if you go with Darren Waller in the 3rd round. I don't really like this strategy, but it is entirely possible to win with it. I understand why people do it because, again, it is very safe. After Darren Waller, we see Terry McLaurin. Now, in the 1st round, we saw dominated by running backs. The 2nd round is when the door starts to open for wide receivers, but in the 3rd and 4th round is typically when you see the wide receiver brigade fly off the board. Maybe it won't be the case in this mock draft, but in a lot of mock drafts, I've done over 30 on Yahoo at this point. I've done a bunch of underdog best ball drafts, so I do a lot of drafts all the time. I've done a bunch on ESPN as well, and I feel as though I have a pretty good feel of how drafts are going to be going. After Terry McLaurin, we see J.K. Dobbins, followed by George Kittle, meet Timbers. I do kind of have a philosophy about the tight end position in fantasy football. It's either I'm going to take Travis Kelce or Darren Waller. I like George Kittle, but not a lot. And then I'm going to either I take those guys or I wait until I get Hawkinson in like the 5th round. And then if I don't get Hawkinson, then I'm fully waiting until like the 9th, 10th, or 11th round. I believe you want to get either one of these top tier guys or one of the guys that has high upside later on in the draft, opposed to kind of waiting till the middle rounds, then drafting a Robert Tonyan, a Logan Thomas, one of those guys who I could easily see being just a one-hit wonder, a one-year wonder last year and then sucking this season. So I'm kind of not really trying to attack that range of tight ends. So after George Kittle, we see Allen Robinson, followed by David Montgomery, Patty Mahomes, Chris Carson, and Keenan Allen. Typically, after the first quarterback comes off the board, you start to see the quarterback position open up a little bit. Most of the time, by the close of the 5th round, all of those top 5 quarterbacks are off the board. Our team right now, Devontae Adams and Austin Eckler. tackler, so we could look to go either way at this point. Here we are going to go wide receivers, and I'm going to go ahead and get a player with a lot of upside in CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver of the Dallas Cowboys. I believe that Amari Cooper is going to be very involved in this offense. He just got off of the PUP list, so all signs for Amari Cooper are pointing positively. But would it surprise you if CeeDee Lamb out-targets him or outscores him? No, it shouldn't. Because while Amari Cooper is the veteran, he's been in the NFL for a while, CeeDee Lamb to me is a better talent overall, so I'm very excited to get CeeDee Lamb onto my team here inside of the third round. Looking after CeeDee Lamb, we see Darrell Henderson, Chris Godwin, Miles Sanders, and DeAndre Swift. Tons of running backs coming off the board. Looking at the running backs still available, I'm not really trying to draft any of these guys inside of the fourth round, so we're just going to go ahead and draft a tight end or a wide receiver at this point. Wide receiver is looking like the pick here. We're going to go with Robert Woods, wide receiver of the LA Rams. Now, right now, Yahoo has ranked Cooper Kupp ahead of Robert Woods, which I don't believe to be true. Let me know down below in the comments who you guys would be drafting, Robert Woods or Cooper Kupp, if you had to choose. Say you can't bake the ADP into it, because typically Cooper Kupp goes about half a round to a round later than Robert Woods. Just heads up, who would you take, Robert Woods or Cooper Kupp? Personally, I would lean with Robert Woods. I see Robert Woods as the alpha, the main target inside of this offense, whereas I see Cooper Kupp very involved as well. I see him as a very undervalued player. I wrote about him on Awesemo.com on the fantasy football tab. You guys can check that out on the website. I write articles every single day on there. I wrote up Cooper Kupp, and I talked about how much I believe in him this season, but I still like Robert Woods a lot more, because I think Robert Woods easily can be a top 12 wide receiver, with Matthew Stafford being the quarterback there now. But real quick, before we break down the next couple of picks, I'd like to let you guys know that today's show is brought to you by our brand new podcast, Betting You. Who will win the Heisman? Can Georgia dethrone Alabama? Which MAC team should you be putting your money on? These questions and more are answered every single Wednesday with Matt Kajaski and Ben Ross as they talk all things college football betting. We have episodes available now on nearly every single podcast platform, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so go ahead and check them out today. So back on into it. After we went ahead and selected Mr. Bobby Trees, Robert Woods, Josh Jacobs came off the board, followed by Mike Davis, Amari Cooper, Julio Jones, Cooper Kupp, and Adam Thielen. So the reason why I feel as though we're kind of in the running back dead zone, as I would like to call it, is because while I'm not overly worried about Myles Gaskin, there is reports that Brian Flores is like, oh, this is a running back by committee. Come on, Brian. Come on, Mr. B-Flow. We know what's happening here. I'm a Dolphins fan. I know Myles Gaskin is going to be seeing a majority of the touches and does have the potential to be a top 12 running back. So I'm not super nervous, but it is a little bit scary when you hear the head coach say that again. Not overly panicking, but if he keeps falling in drafts, which I believe he will, he is going to be a supreme value, potentially falling into the 6th round. I don't think his ADP has moved just yet, because people haven't been able to react to it just yet, because it came out today or the day before that they talked about it right here. Miami will use a 3-back committee. If you're listening on the podcast app, shout out to you. Leave a 5-star review. I'm doing air quotes, 3-back committee. Wink, wink, wink. Malcolm Brown was the guy seeing the most snaps. Come on, man. You think they're going to use Malcolm Brown over Myles Gaskin? That's what people are talking about. There is no way in all hell that ends up happening. There is genuinely no way. So I'm not really afraid of this situation that we have here. In Miami, some are. I personally am not. Cooper Kupp, Adam Thielen, DJ Moore, Tyler Lockett, TJ Hawkinson, and Brandon Ayuk. This first player right here is drafting the craziest team construction I've ever seen. They take Mahomes, then they take Allen, then they take Darren Waller, then they take TJ Hawkinson, and then Brandon Ayuk. Do not take, if you're going to take Darren Waller, please do not take TJ Hawkinson a round later. That makes absolutely no sense. You don't want to have a tight end starting in your flex a majority of the weeks. That is absolutely crazy, and that's what you have to do if you draft Hawkinson inside the 4th round with Darren Waller. I like Hawkinson. I like Darren Waller, but I don't want them on the exact same team. After we see Hawkinson, Brandon Ayuk came off the board, followed by Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson. So we're about to be up on the board here in 6 picks, and hopefully my boy Mike Davis falls to us. I originally kind of was starting to think that I like Myles Gaskin more, but with that news, while I'm not overly worried, like I said, I mean, to me, Mike Davis is just the, by far and away, clear, safer pick in this situation. So after we went ahead and we're talking right there, Kyler Murray came off the board, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Travis Etienne, Myles Gaskin, and Deontay Johnson. So hopefully Davis falls our way. We did see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quarterbacks come off the board already. Very surprising to see Justin Herbert go ahead of Dak Prescott. I understand how there is that injury risk, right? He is banged up right now, but all signs out of camp are pointing to the fact, and all the signs out of Dallas Cowboys, all that they're saying is that he's going to be fine. So I'm going to tend to believe that, and I'm going to hope that he is okay, which I assume he will be. That is why a lot of people like to draft later on in the offseason, because probably 2 weeks from now, when you're actually drafting, when a lot of people are drafting, we will have a much better idea on how healthy he actually is, which I believe he will be. So after ETN, we see Myles Gaskin, Deontay Johnson, Damian Harris, and Kyle Pitts. So we're on the board here. Mike Davis fell our way. To me, this is a no-brainer pick. The guy tore it up last season in Carolina after Christian McCaffrey got hurt. He moves to Atlanta, where he is the clear #1 running back on this team. I see no way that Mike Davis ends up getting his touches spelled by another running back in this backfield. To me, it seems as though it is a no-brainer to be drafting Mike Davis at this point inside of the 5th round. I know a lot of people are a bit nervous. Nick, he's really old, all that shit. I don't really care, to be honest with you. He has never been a guy that saw an overwhelming amount of carries with the fact that his age is really going to affect him, like he has too much tread on the tires or anything. So I think Mike Davis, who tore it up last year, will be able to do the same thing in Atlanta. After we went with Mike Davis, we see Dak Prescott, followed by Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt is one of those picks inside of drafts that just does nothing for me. Sometimes when I make a pick, I'm real fucking excited. I'm real pumped up. Like when I got Mike Davis right there, maybe I didn't show it, but mentally inside of my brain, there was a fucking party going on. I was super excited to draft Mike Davis. But for Kareem Hunt, it's like, yeah, I got Kareem Hunt. He's my running back too. It's okay, right? It's just okay. Like if Chubb was to go down, then he has more value. If not, he's like 10, 11, 12 points a week, and you're fine with it, right? It could be much worse than Kareem Hunt, but the upside there is limited severely by Nick Chubb, so I'm not really overly excited to get Kareem Hunt on my team, but it'll probably end up on a couple of my rosters. After we saw Dak, we saw Kareem Hunt, Mark Andrews, and Ronald Jones back up on the board here. The running back position is looking dry. Tight end as well. Looking at the quarterback position, nothing special, so we're probably just going to dip, dive, and duck back into this wide receiver position here. I'm going to go with my boy T. Higgins, wide receiver of the Cincinnati Bengals. The reason why I like T. Higgins so much is because there are so many reports about Jamar Chase struggling in camp. And we did not see Jamar Chase yet playing a preseason game with Joe Burrow. Will we even see that? Probably not. They should sit Joe Burrow down for all of preseason. And all these reports are that Jamar Chase is failing to get separation from the DBs. And he's playing on the Bengals. The Bengals do not have the greatest of corners, defensive backs on that team. So I am pretty nervous about Jamar Chase, especially where he's going around the range of these other wide receivers that I actually like. So to me, I'm kind of steering clear away from him at this point. So I would much rather prefer to draft T. Higgins. So before we get on into continuing the recap, I'd like to let you guys know that we also have a brand new YouTube channel for sports betting. If you love what we do on the DFS channel and you love what we do here on the Fantasy Football channel, then please go ahead and look down below in the description and click that subscribe button to the Awesemo Odds channel, link in the description. Turn the notification bell on and enjoy what we have in store for sports betting. If you want to check out some of our other free content, we have our fantasy football rankings in front of the paywall on awesemo.com on the fantasy football tab. And for other sports betting, you can check out the Awesemo Odds tab for access to the Odd Shopper and our MLB betting tools, which include our sports betting model and our player prop tools. So please make sure that you guys check those things out. So back on into looking at the board after we went ahead and drafted Mr. T. Higgins. Chase Edmonds came off the board, followed by Jamar Chase, Tyler Higbee, Russell Wilson, Tampa Bay Tom Brady, and Antonio Brown. This draft has went absolutely fucking haywire at this point with all the quarterbacks off the board. I believe I am the only one without a quarterback. I am just kidding. 1, 2, 3, 4 teams, including myself, do not have a quarterback. This is one of the most clutch features created by Yahoo Fantasy. I suggest if you guys do draft on Yahoo Fantasy to use the draft board and the position drafted grid like it is some type of sacred text. The easiest way to follow the draft is by looking at the draft board, but when you're looking to see what positions the other players need around you, the best way to look at it is the positions drafted grid. I like to look here and say, hey, you know what? I need a running back. Say, for example, I need a running back at this pick, but the guys that are going right over here at the 12 pick, the 11 and the 12 pick, they already have 2 running backs, but I also need a wide receiver. So maybe I go wide receiver first and then go running back in the next round, because there's a pretty high chance that they don't look running back in those picks. That's something that is very important to note, and is something that I do a lot in my drafts to try to predict what my opponents are going to do in the draft. Now, is it 100% possible that I predict wrong? They both draft 2 running backs. They have 4 running backs to start off their draft. 100% that could happen, but you do want to get the best edge by trying to assume what they can do, and the best way to do that is by looking at the draft board as well as the positions drafted grid. This is why Yahoo is my favorite website to draft on. No free ads. They don't pay us anything, but if I'm doing a redraft league, I love looking at the draft board on here. It's chef's kiss, magnifique, beautiful. So Tom Brady going really high in these drafts. I don't know why that happens on Yahoo. It's probably based upon where his ranking is on the screen, because a lot of people they just draft based upon what they see on the screen, right? Rodgers is up here, let me draft Rodgers. And that's just how people do it. It happens all the time. You would be surprised. That's why on ESPN you see Travis Kelce going like the first 6 picks every single time, because he's ranked as the 4th highest player on that website. So he's going to be drafted significantly higher than where he's ranked on Yahoo at pick 14 or 12, something like that. He's going to get drafted a lot later because he is just not as high up on the screen. So after we see Antonio Brown, we see Robbie Anderson, Michael Thomas, and Trey Sermon to close out the 6th round, followed by Odell Beckham Jr., Zach Moss, Robert Tonyan, Corey Davis, and Logan Thomas. Zach Moss is an excellent pick, but don't draft him in the 7th round. Please don't do that. Please do not do that. Michael Thomas in the 6th round, also very, very crazy, because he could actually miss 8, 9, 10 games. How many wide receivers does this guy have? He already has Lockett and McLaurin, but I still don't get that, because you could probably get Michael Thomas inside of like the 12th round, maybe the 10th round at the highest. I don't really understand that at all. So with the team composition we have right now, let's go ahead and pull up our team right here. We have Devontae Adams and CeeDee Lamb are our wide receivers, and our other wide receivers are Robert Woods and T. Higgins. So we only have 2 running backs at this point. A good rule of thumb is to draft more running backs than wide receivers. So we're going to go ahead and attack the running back position here. Now we are definitely going to commit a reach right here, but it is what it is. I want to get my guy, even if he might have been available here at pick 87, and that is Michael Carter, running back of the New York Football Jets. I have talked about this guy on the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel, where you are watching right now at nauseum. I've talked about this guy so many times, because I believe that while he may not be listed as the starter right now for the New York Jets, that he may be behind Tevin Coleman, Ty Johnson, all these other guys, that he is by far and away the best running back on this team. All reports out of camp point that way. My belief before training camp even started was that this guy is the best running back here, rookie out of UNC. I have very high hopes for Michael Carter this year, and I'm very excited to get him onto my team. After we went ahead and got Michael Carter, Kenny Golladay came off the board. Kenny Golladay is getting slept upon to the fucking maximum right now. I don't understand. I don't understand, because Kenny Golladay, sure, he's banged up. He's banged up, but all signs are pointing towards him being okay. There have been no reports that Kenny Golladay is struggling with rehab or that he's not going to be back. He should be back this week or next week. He's going to be fine. So don't worry too much about Kenny Golladay. Get that value now in the 7th round before it is a little bit too late. So after we went ahead and drafted Kenny Golladay, we see Ryan Tannehill and the LA defense come off the board. Do not be the person to draft a defense this early on in drafts. Wait until later on in the draft and draft a defense. But I will tell you guys to use this tip. This is a very important tip that Laffy gave out on the channel a couple of days ago, that when you're drafting early, if you're drafting right now, you're drafting this weekend, instead of drafting a kicker and defense on Yahoo where they don't make you, draft extra bench players, draft those extra running backs, because injuries do happen in training camp. They happen in preseason, so you want to be ready. You want to put a metaphorical condom over your roster. Do that by drafting no kicker and no defense at the end of drafts. Right here, looking at the board, Raheem Mostert is my favorite pick out of all of these guys. A lot of people are very, very high on Trey Sermon, and I understand why. Out of the Ohio State, he has a ton of potential. But historically, Kyle Shanahan's not a guy that loves rookie running backs. Kyle Shanahan is a guy that loves running back by committee. He likes using a bunch of running backs at once, and I believe that if Raheem Mostert gets the first licks, gets the first touches on the team, which he should, and he becomes the guy, it is a hot hand approach in San Francisco, and if he is the hot hand, then he is a potential top 12, top 10 running back week in and week out that you can get in the 8th round. I understand it is a risk. It is definitely a risk. But when you're past the first 4 rounds of the draft, that's where I try to be as safe as possible. Like I said earlier, you're wrapping the metaphorical rubber over your team. Past the 4th round, I'm ready to get a little bit more crazy, to take more risks, because you can lose your draft in the first 4 rounds. You really can. You can completely destroy your team by chasing injuries, by reaching on ADP, but later on in the draft, you can't really do that. You can win your league, or you can't win your league in the first 4 rounds, what I'm trying to say, but you can certainly fuck your team up and lose it inside of the first 4 rounds. So go ahead and try to keep it safe early on in the draft. Probably should have mentioned that earlier, but you know, it is what it is. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this video thus far. I really would appreciate if you guys hit that like button if you have been enjoying. So after Raheem Mostert came Tyler, Boyd, Noah Fant, James Robinson, Washington football team defense, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So looking at our team right now, we have a very solid, balanced roster. We have Devontae Adams, CeeDee Lamb, our 2 starting wide receivers. Our flex is a wide receiver in Robert Woods. We also have T. Higgins. So 1, 2, 3, 4 total wide receivers. Our running backs are Austin Eckler, Mike Davis, Michael Carter, and Raheem Mostert. So we have 4 wide receivers and we have 4 running backs. So a very balanced start to our draft. We are at that point where we're in the tight end dead zone, but so many tight ends are coming off the board that I feel like I may have to reach on a guy like Irv Smith, because personally, after Irv Smith comes off the board and Mike Gesicki, it seems like the situation where you have to draft 2 tight ends. Because while I like the upside of Adam Troutman without Michael Thomas, who knows how targeted he will be? We just assume that he will be. But that's not how coaches roll in the NFL. Sean Payton isn't going to take Michael Thomas's numbers and inject them into Adam Troutman. That's not what he's going to do. It's going to be split around. He's going to share the fucking load there, and it's not just all going to be Adam Troutman. So while I like the upside, I think you have to draft 2 tight ends if you draft Adam Troutman. Same thing goes if you want to draft Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, Evan Ingram, any of these guys. You need to draft 2 tight ends, whereas I'm very comfortable with Irv Smith. I'm comfortable with Mike Gesicki. We saw Mike Gesicki be targeted by Tua with a deep ball in the game in the preseason. So please do not overreact to preseason, but understand that there are some things to note that are very important. I talked about the preseason yesterday in yesterday's video on here. So if you guys want to see my recap of the preseason, I talk about every game. Make sure that you do check that out. But I do really like Irv Smith, and I do feel like after that, it really is kind of a shit tier situation at the tight end position. Quarterback is just as deep as it gets, right? Stafford, perfectly fine with him being my quarterback. Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, Matt Ryan, Trey Lance. Now, obviously not my starting quarterback, but I'm fine drafting. Maybe if you don't get one of these quarterbacks that I really like in Burrow or Stafford, then you just say fuck it, right? You draft Lance, and then you also draft a starter, a guy who you know is going to play, Tua or a Big Ben or something. You match these guys together, and you get as much upside as possible. So looking at the board right here, going to look either running back or wide receiver. To me, there's a decent fall off after a couple of these running backs. So we're going to go with Uncle Lenny Fournette here of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. While I don't believe he is the lead back there, I think it will be Ronald Jones. The way Bruce Arians kind of is coaching this team is that it doesn't really matter who you think. It doesn't matter what your name is, jabroni, basically, like you're the fucking Dwayne The Rock Johnson, because it doesn't matter. He doesn't care. If you fuck up in the game, if you make a bad move, then guess what? Bruce Arians sits you on the bench. It's Rojo time. If Rojo messes up, it's Leonard Fournette time. That's just how it's going to work. So either of these guys really do have top 10 potential if the other was to get hurt. So I'm fine taking Leonard Fournette inside of the 9th round. Again, I don't expect him to really ever be starting on my team, but he is definitely a high upside piece. Hopefully, Brandon Cooks falls our way. I like that. But looking at quarterback, will someone take 2 quarterbacks? Really high chance with all these people drafting quarterbacks early that they will take a second one, but I'm going to go ahead and take the risk and take Brandon Cooks here, as I feel as though this guy is a pretty safe option later on in the draft that does have top 12 upside, as I do believe that he probably won't finish in the top 12, right? He almost did last year. He probably won't this year because of the fact that it's probably not going to be Deshaun Watson, but it could be. But it could be, and he is the number 1 wide receiver on a team, and you can find him in the 10th round, the 11th round, the 9th round of drafts. How does that happen? How's that? And a guy played so good last year. But Nick, Deshaun Watson might not be there. I understand. I get that. That's why he's down here, probably. But to be honest with you, even with Davis Mills, with Tyrod Taylor, Brandon Cooks is still going to be very good. So I'm excited to get him here deep down in the draft. After we saw David Johnson come off the board, we saw my old bitch Lane, but my young Hoku come off the board. Greg Zuerlein, Cortland Sutton, Tampa Bay defense, Debo Samuel, Leonard Fournette, Juju Smith-Schuster, Corvette, Tyler Bass Pro Shop, AJ Dillon, James Conner. We went with Brandon Cooks, then Kenyon Drake, Jason Sanders, DJ Chark, and Gus Bus Edwards coming off the board. DJ Chark's ADP went from like the 6th round, and it has plummeted like you're on the Tower of Terror in Disney or something. Like, it is fallen off the edge of the earth because he's injured, had to have surgery, I believe, on his thumb, one of his fingers at least. Not great. Not great. Marvin Jones looked really good. Marvin Jones has always been the guy I've been targeting, so I kind of feel like I was right maybe on that, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Chark is the guy. You can't gauge too much from just one preseason game, especially since Chark did not play in that game. After Chark, we see Gus Bus Edwards, Will Fuller, Kansas City defense, and Matthew Stafford. So we may have fucked up, and the teams are going to start taking 2 quarterbacks before I can even get Joe Burrow, which is going to make me very, very disappointed. But before we get promptly disappointed before we make our next pick, I would like to let you guys know that if you are going to want to stick around all season for NFL DFS, that you might want to grab the Early Bird Awesemo Plus NFL Annual Pass right now for 25% off using promo code BLITZ. BLITS, Blitz. That's a full season's worth of Awesemo Plus player projections, ownership projections, top stacks, all types of the great stuff that is offered on Awesemo Plus NFL Annual Pass, as well as the premium Slack and tons of other new additions that we are adding this season. As an added bonus, this includes projections and updated depth charts all preseason long. That's promo code BLITZ, BLITZ, for 25% off Awesemo Plus NFL Annual. Just check out the link in the description on this video to go ahead and activate that. So make sure that if you guys are DFS players, you play fantasy football, you also play NFL DFS, to check that out. Please do not draft Will Lutz as this feller did, because Will Lutz is missing 8 to 9 weeks, I believe, with a surgery, so he's not going to be able to play those couple of weeks. And we did get our day ruined because someone drafted my boy Joe Burrow. But what should I expect out of these people that you draft in Yahoo mock drafts with that draft 2 quarterbacks? And what's funny is some people will point and say that, Nick, that's not accurate. That doesn't happen. Well, it depends what kind of league you're in, because in my leagues, with my friends, even though they're watching these videos, even though they're pretty smart when it comes to fantasy football, they still do it. They still do it. So same thing goes with drafting a defense or a kicker early. That does happen in normal leagues as well. So after Joe Burrow came Curtis Samuel, Will Lutz, Tony Pollard, Mike Williams, Adam Troutman, Devontae Smith, Marvin Jones, and we are back up on the board here. We didn't go tight end earlier, or did we? We didn't, but the tight end that I wanted fell to me because I kind of forgot to do it. Irv Smith, he does typically fall late, so I'm not surprised that he's available at this price. I love Irv Smith this season. Irv Smith looked so good last year without Kyle Rudolph in the lineup, and now that Kyle Rudolph is not there, he's in New York with the Giants. Irv Smith's upside is immense this season. I'm excited to get Irv Smith onto my team, and then we're going to close this one out with a quarterback and a running back, and then probably just hammer on some additional running backs instead of drafting a kicker or a defense. So the quarterback position is a little bit whack at this point. Not terrible, just not exactly what you'd want out of your starting quarterback. But I like Trevor Lawrence's upside in Jacksonville, as I don't believe that defense is going to be very good. And I think they're going to have to pass the ball a lot on this team. And Trevor Lawrence does have some pretty solid wide receivers there, Chark, Shenault, as well as Marvin Jones. So while I don't love drafting Trevor Lawrence, while you might think, hey, maybe I want to draft a backup quarterback, maybe I will. That could be in the cards for this if you draft a guy like Trevor Lawrence. And make sure when you're drafting backup tight ends or quarterbacks to pay heavy attention to the bye. During the draft, if you've noticed, I don't give a single F about the bye week. I never once am looking at the bye weeks that are over here, because the odds that these guys are even in your starting lineup on your team, there's people who get cut all the time off your fantasy roster, there's trades that happen throughout the fantasy season, so you don't really have to worry about that. But at quarterback and tight end, where you're going to need those guys to play when your quarterback's on bye, when your tight end is on bye, that you don't want to have them have the exact same bye week. That is the only real tip I'll talk about when it comes to bye weeks. After we went with T. Law, we see Cole Beasley come off the board, followed by Matty Ice Baby, Trey Lance, Naheem Hines, Jarvis Landry, Mike Licky, Amagasicki, on Latavius Murray, Philip Lindsay, Alexander Mattison, Ryan Fitzmagic, Evan Ingram, Hollywood Brown, Baker Mayfield, Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, and the New England Patriots defense. Is Justin Fields still available? What is his bye week? Bye 10, and we have bye 7. Very interesting to stack 2 rookie quarterbacks, but I think Justin Fields really does have top 12 potential if he's playing. I think I like Tua as well, so you could kind of go either way there. Let me know down below in the comments, who would you rather draft? Assume you already have Trevor Lawrence on your lineup. You're going to draft 2 quarterbacks. Are you drafting Tua, or are you drafting Justin Fields, or are you drafting maybe one of these other quarterbacks that's on the board here? We're going to go with the upside of Justin Fields. I do like Tua a lot, though. I am a Dolphins fan, and I do believe that this offense is going to look very, very good in 2021. Tua looked really good in the Bears game, but then he made a stupid mistake of trying to be very aggressive when he should have either just ran the ball or just fucking Eli Manning sacked himself or just basically thrown the ball away or something. He just went to attack the end zone. It was a greedy play, but at least Tua's throwing the ball, because back in the day, man, not even really back in the day, last year, Tua wasn't taking very many shots, and it was very impressive to see him at least take that shot here. So again, we're not drafting a defense or a kicker, because that is not what you should do if you're drafting this early. So we're going to go ahead and draft more running backs and wide receivers. Here we're going to go ahead and get James White, running back of the New England Patriots. While I don't really think he's going to be all that involved, there is a shot that he does have a stranglehold over the receiving game here in New England, and with the offense being stronger, with the defense being better, that overall James White just has a much better season than he had last year, where he was very much a very big disappointment. After I went with James White, we see the Denver Broncos defense come off the board. Anthony Firkser, Elijah Moore, Big Ben Roethlisberger, Tua Tagovailoa, J.D. McKissick, Cole Kmet, Buffalo Bills defense, Gerald Everett, Los Angeles defense, and Rodrigo, you sunk my Blankenship. The Denver defense is one of my favorite targets in drafts right now, as their opening schedule to the season is, in some order, the Jets, the Jags, and the Giants. Very, very good opening schedule, and I'm looking to stream defenses, which means that you play a defense week 1, and then week 2, if you don't like their matchup week 2, then you just stream them, you get rid of them, you cut them off your roster, and you add a new defense. So that is something that I really do like to do throughout the season, and something that I implore that you guys do as well. I'm going to try to ask the people on Awesemo if I can write an article every single week on the defenses to add, and that is going to be something that I am going to probably be writing all season long. A very important piece of content that I believe you guys are going to want the information on. So looking at the board here, looking at the running back position, there isn't too much available here that I like. Malcolm Brown appears that he's going to be somewhat used. Carlos Hyde. What the hell? He got so used in that game, the preseason game. I don't think he's going to be that used normally, but that was honestly crazy. Same thing goes with Malcolm Brown. I like Tevin Coleman, but I don't really want to handcuff my Michael Carter with Tevin Coleman, even though you could probably do that if I guess you needed a running back to start week 1, but that's not really the case when we already have Austin Eckler and Mike Davis. So looking at the board here, we are going to go wide receiver, maybe go ahead here and take an upside shot. John Brown did not appear to be wanting to be starting on this team. I don't know what the hell happened. He's just not being used right now for the Vegas Raiders. Maybe we'll see him more this weekend in preseason. I really do hope so. So I'm going to go with the high upside shot here and just take a shot on Henry Ruggs. Even though I hate Henry Ruggs, I don't think he's very good. I think he's a really much a one-trick pony, just a really fast wide receiver. But with John Brown not showing up at all, maybe Henry Ruggs actually is that guy that I just did not believe he was. So now the draft is just about over. There is a couple of seconds left before these two teams make their final pick. So I will recap that before we head on out of this video and do a nice recap of our team. So I do hope you guys did end up enjoying this video. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button down below. And if you are new, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You made it all the way through this video, so I assumed that you had a great time at least, and maybe you just hate me and you like to hate watch the videos, but that helps as well. So very nice to you. Thank you for watching all of this video. Final pick of the draft, the Chicago Bears defense. So to recap our team, I'll make myself a little bit bigger here onto the screen. To recap our team, our starting quarterback is Trevor Lawrence. Our wide receivers are Devontae Adams and C.D. Lamb. Our running backs are Austin Eckler and Mike Davis. Our tight end is Irv Smith. Our flex is Robert Woods. Our bench is comprised of T. Higgins, Michael Carter, Raheem Mostert, Leonard Fournette, Brandon Cooks, Justin Fields, James White, and Henry Ruggs. So let me know down below what you guys thought about this team. I love you guys. Hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. Make sure you subscribe down below. Stay safe as always. Goodbye.